Hi there, this is Ms. Redding, and I just wanted to walk you through understanding your grade in chemistry. So here, just to remind you, here's the grade breakdown. You earn your letter grade on a general 10% scale. Underneath the 70% mark, it depends on where you're at with your percentages. Between 60 and 69% is generally an incomplete. During the term, you might see IP on your grade, for meaning that it's an in progress. Below that is considered an F. Please note that incompletes or in progress grades do become an F at the end of the term. To pass the course, you must demonstrate mastery of each ELO as well as earn at least a 70% or better in the course. Quizzes, generally you are tested on 1 to 2 ELOs at a time, and that's your first opportunity to demonstrate mastery. And then on the unit test, you have another opportunity to have a crack at those ELOs. Over here on the right, you can see the grade breakdown for the categories in ARIES. The mastery category is just for tracking the ELOs, and what you're looking for is a 1, which would indicate that you've passed the ELO, whereas a 0 means that you've not yet passed it. Because this is just a checklist, it does not count toward your overall grade, but it is, of course, important to see whether or not you're actually passing. Forms such as syllabi don't count, but they're just a checklist that I have in the grade book. And then documentation and CERs, or claim evidence and reasoning. This would include any unit work, your model summaries. This is for 15%. Formal lab reports are 15%. We'll have 4 in the course. And then the midterms and finals, or midterm and finals, are just 5% collectively. Now, each unit weighs approximately 9 to 10% of your grade, but within that, it's broken down into 10% and 90%. 90% being the summative tests and 10% being formative things like Edpuzzles, etc. Now, retakes on quizzes can be done one time for mastery, and you must show your completed ELO practice work in order to do that. Tests, there's a whole process for that where corrections are required, and we go over that in detail in class, and then your scores will be updated accordingly. So let's take a look at some ELOs. For example, in Unit 1, you would be given this list in the beginning of the unit, and generally I tell you which quiz you'll be assessed on each ELO. And we do lots of practice for each of these, and then you will see ARIES updated as to whether or not you've demonstrated mastery. If you don't pass it on the quiz and you still don't pass it on a quiz retake, ultimately either on a test or a test retake, when you do pass it, that 0 will then become a 1. Let's take a look at an example grade. This may or may not reflect where you are right now in the term, but it does have grades on there that you will see at some point or another, and I like how it represents different categories. So upon first glance, a student looks like they have an 80% or a B-, but let's break it down. Remember, you need to pass all the ELOs. A 1 in the mastery category indicates that you are passing, a 0 indicates that you are not yet passing, and you must earn at least a 70% overall in the course. And then each unit makes up an approximate 9 to 10% of the grade, 90% for the summative, 10% for the formative. So here we see a lab report. Again, you'll have a few of these during the semester. 15% of your grade goes for lab reports, and here you'll see that student's grade on a lab report that you will or have written already. Then you see model summaries and CERs. These are model summaries you do for every unit. Claim evidence and reasonings are done throughout the unit as well, and these count for 15% of your grade. Here you see the summative test grades. I do break those down by ELO and non-ELO. They generally count for 100 points per unit, where the ELO is more points than the non-ELO. And then here's an example of an Edpuzzle grade counting at just 10% within the unit. Now here's that mastery category I was talking about. For this unit, there are 4 ELOs that you can see here, and I break them down by unit as, for example, 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, etc. And then you'll see that category saying mastery. So let's take a look at those grades. They passed the first one, not the second one. They did pass the third, and they passed the fourth. So now then we notice that this particular ELO is not yet passed, so this student is not actually yet passing. So that's really important to pay attention to not only the overall grade, but the mastery category as well. And so you'll need to work closely with me to make sure that you're working on your retakes and understanding the concepts so that you can have all ones in that category. I hope that's helpful, and we'll see you later.